What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So I will be making schedule predictions for every single Power 5 team in college football for this upcoming season. And I will also do a subsequent conference standings video once I finish every single team in a specific conference, just as a synopsis of all of my schedule predictions. Those synopsis videos will be coming much later on into August as we get closer to the start of the season. Between then and now, though, I have to get through all of the individual teams first. And so I've got to finish up the Pac-12 and the Big Ten still. So let's go ahead and get into the Oregon State schedule predictions. So some quick thoughts on the Oregon State program as a whole heading into 2022. And this is a somewhat beleaguered program at this point. Now they're not in the same spot as an Arizona or a Kansas by any means, but they are also undeniably behind a lot of the other teams in the conference, which makes it hard to end up with a competitive record at the end of the year. And with the Pac-12 being really the weakest of the Power 5 conferences on average, and if you want to argue about that, you can. But they're not as good as the SEC and the Big Ten. Really, they're not as good as the ACC or the Big 12 either, but you can argue a little bit with those. Regardless, they're not one of the top Power 5 conferences. But yes, with them being at the bottom of that one, it's hard for them to compete with really the entirety of the Power 5. They're in that bottom range of that entire grouping, and I just don't see a clear path for Oregon State to get out of that bottom to middling range at this point. Now, that isn't to say that this is a program without hope or anything. It's not even able to make a bowl game or something like that. But they do tend to hover right around that 4, 5, maybe 6 win range a season, and I don't see anything coming this year that's really going to change that too much. I mean, even to make a bowl game, you're looking at needing an upset or two along the way just to have a shot at sneaking into bowl eligibility, and that holds true this year. And so that makes for some tough scheduling dynamics. That makes for teams that may be good enough, just generally speaking, to be bowl eligible, but with the way the schedules play out, it's a fight to get there. Overall, this isn't a terrible program or anything like that, but it also isn't a great one at this point. And with the schedule they have, just making a bowl game this year should be seen as a huge win, in my opinion. So now let's talk about some teams who just don't have much of a chance to win, barring some level of catastrophe. And there's just one of those teams for Oregon State this year, and it's Montana State. And that one is honestly being a little bit generous towards Oregon State, because Montana State was a very good team in FCS last year, and they're not a team that is a necessarily guaranteed win. I don't feel like talking about it too much. I still feel like Oregon State is an overwhelming favorite there, but definitely not one that's as easy as you may expect. So let's go ahead and talk about week 1 on the schedule, and that is against Boise State. Now, they get Boise State at home, but Boise State is not an easy out either. That is a very tough team to play. They're probably about even with Oregon State, just overall roster-wise, in my opinion. But it's close. It's not one that Oregon State should look at as a gimme, G5 win or anything like that. I am going to go with Oregon State to get that win, just because I think they are slightly better. They are at home. But, man, it is tough. It is a toss-up in a lot of ways. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, but it is the benefit of the doubt. So I'm going to give them a week 1 win there. Week 2, they go on the road at Fresno State, and it's the same story as Boise State, in my opinion. That is not an easy G5 kind of matchup. Now, it's one that Oregon State is probably a slightly better team in, but this one they're on the road for, so that could be difficult. I'm going to give them the win there, but again, it is a benefit of the doubt situation. It is one where they'll probably be a small favorite, but it is just that. It's a small favorite. It is not a game that you should look at and be like, Fresno State, that's a win. Certainly is not a game like that. Definitely one to keep an eye on. Week 3 is the Montana State game that we touched on. So then week 4, they host USC. That's how they open up the Pac-12. What a way to start conference play. You get to host Lincoln Riley and USC. Now, USC is in a much better spot than Oregon State overall as a program right now. They have far more talent. They have Caleb Williams. They have Lincoln Riley. They're going to be favored here, and they're going to be favored pretty big. Now, with it being early in the season and USC has some interesting question marks on their roster right now, it's one that Oregon State could maybe find an upset in. I don't think that they will. I think USC's offense is going to be too high-powered for that, but certainly one that if they're going to find an upset, that would be one that they could pull off. Still going to go with USC to win, though. They follow that up with at Utah. I don't think it gets any tougher in the Pac-12 than at Utah this year. That is an incredibly tough matchup, and one that I don't see Utah losing, to be honest. I'm going to go with Utah to win, and win pretty big. Oregon State may be competitive in that one. I'm not saying that they're going to get completely just run over, but I also don't think they're going to be able to win that one. They follow that up with at Stanford, and this is certainly a winnable game for them. I think Stanford is ever so slightly better than Oregon State, but it is ever so slightly. You could argue Oregon State is a better team. We'll just call them even for the purposes of this. But Stanford is the home team here, and they're not a team that I think you can take lightly. This game is really 50-50 to me. Could go either way. Certainly a toss-up game, and one that could kind of shift both teams' seasons, in my opinion, and really in a lot of ways a must-win for both programs. I'm going to go with Stanford to win that. Oregon State to lose there. It's a tough game. It's one Oregon State could definitely win. I almost want to go with them, but with Stanford being at home, I'm going to go with Stanford there. Now, they follow that one up with a home game against Washington State, and that one is one where I think they're another one that they're an even matchup. They're very similar teams as far as their overall talent comparison. Now, with Oregon State being the home game in this one, I lean their direction. It's certainly one they could lose, but it's also one that I think they might be a small favorite in. If they're not, then they'll be a small dog. It'll be a close spread either way. It's going to be a competitive game. Definitely a toss-up kind of thing. With Oregon State being at home, I'm going to side with them. I think they'll probably split that in the Stanford game, to be honest. I'm going to go with them to beat Washington State, lose to Stanford. Week after that, they host Colorado, and this is one that would be a huge win for them. It's one that they will likely be a small favorite in, but I do think Colorado is going to be a pretty good team next year. Their record probably won't reflect that, but I think they're going to find some wins along the way, and I think they're going to be a little bit underrated just based on what their record will show. So I think Colorado finds an upset here against Oregon State. It is not, I use upset loosely. It's not really a big upset. I think the teams are pretty similarly matched. I think Oregon State is a little bit better than Colorado, but not dramatically so. So I'm going to go with Colorado to get a big win there. Then Oregon State gets the bye week heading into the Washington game. And that one, if it was at home, I would be able to, with confidence, pick Oregon State. On the road, though, Washington is certainly the better of the two teams. Washington is also at home. So even with the bye week leading up to it and it being played on a Friday and all that stuff, I just don't see Oregon State pulling that one off. I think Washington is just better than them by a wide enough margin that they're not going to be able to get that one done, in my opinion. Follow that up the next week with a home game against Cal, and this is another one that is kind of a 50-50 toss-up game that they could win. They really need to win, honestly, but also Cal is the same way. They need this win, too. I think this is going to be really competitive, and this one could really shape the seasons for a lot of these two teams. It could really determine if they make a bowl or not in this game. I think Cal is better than Oregon State at this point. I don't think they're better than them by a wide margin necessarily, though. I'm going to go with Cal to win on the road, but another one, Oregon State could certainly win, 50-50 kind of game, certainly a toss-up game there. They follow that up with at Arizona State, and this is another one where they have a shot in, especially if this one was at home, I'd give them a good shot in. I think Arizona State's going to be favored here. I think they should be favored here. I think they're the better team, and they're the home team. But it's going to be close. It's not going to be a game where they just get completely wiped out and don't have a chance in. Arizona State has a lot of question marks circling around that program, a lot of intrigue there, some off-the-field stuff, some transfer portal stuff. So one that they could look to find a win in. I'm going to go with Arizona State, though. I think they're better. Next game up is Oregon, and this is the last game of the year. They get them at home, but, man, Oregon is one of the best teams in the conference. They always are. I think they're going to be again this year. Now, with year one under Dan Lanning, maybe you catch them slipping up a little bit here. If they're in the Pac-12 championship contention, maybe you catch them looking ahead to that game a little bit. I don't think so. I think Oregon is going to win this game. I think Oregon is the better team by a pretty wide margin. But one to keep an eye on, if you're an Oregon State fan, this is one that you could really circle similar to some of the other ones I talked about. That would be a big upset, but it's not, completely unfeasible. It's one that they could pull off. I'm not going to predict them to. I think Oregon's going to win, but one that you might be able to circle as a Super Bowl type of game. So that would make Oregon State 4-8 on the season, which is a pretty disappointing year overall in my opinion, but I find it hard to see them doing too much better. Now, 6 wins is certainly a possibility, but it's going to take a few upsets along the way to get there. Maybe they pull off wins against Stanford and Colorado or Cal, and that's certainly not out of the question. But it's also, they have to go pretty strong in their 50-50 games. If you consider maybe Stanford, Washington State, Colorado, and Cal to be 50-50 kind of games, they have to win just about all of them to get to a bowl game. Seems unlikely. I've got them kind of splitting that. It's going to take some upsets if they want to get to 6. I mean, just getting to 4 kind of assumes an upset already along the way, and that they handle the Boise State and Fresno State games, of which neither are a given. It also assumes they handle Montana State, which I know sounds like a given, but I promise you it's not. Oregon State's just not an outstanding football team at this point, even by the Pac-12 standards, and they're not Arizona or Kansas or something like that. But speaking of Arizona, that's a team that would have been a solid win for them most likely, and they don't get them on the schedule. So the schedule doesn't line up great for them, and they're just not on the same level as a lot of the other programs in the conference. They're not as good as Washington or Oregon or Utah or USC or even really the Arizona States and the Cals of the world. They're probably a step below that even, honestly. They're right in that range, but that's where you get your 50-50 games that they'd have to really run the table with. So for me, I'm gonna say anything beyond 4 to 5 wins for them is going to be a really tough ask. 6 if things go really well for them, but I just don't think they're going to be able to do that. They always tend to hover in that 4 to 5 win range. To be honest, I don't think this year's going to be much different. Anyway, though, that'll do it for this one. Let me know down below in the comment section where you guys agree with me and or disagree with me on the Oregon State schedule in 2022. Tell me what record you think they're going to have next year and who, if anyone, they're going to lose to. Also, if you've made it this far in the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel because it does help out tremendously. Let me know you're enjoying this kind of content, and there's going to be a lot more college football content coming in the future. I have already finished the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12. I'm about halfway through the Pac-12. I'm going to do the Big 10 after that. So there's a lot of content coming soon, and that'll be on your way. And then a lot of content that's already out, so check that out if you haven't. Look out for the new stuff. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.